everyone, today I'm going to show you how to design custom envelopes just like this, where we have a full print on both sides of the envelope, and how to order those with PrintsWell Fulfillment. Let's just go ahead and dive in because the possibilities are endless here and I know you're so excited. Hi everyone, I'm Lainey. I'm a wedding invitation designer and I love to teach people how to design beautiful, unique wedding invitations. I started a challenge a couple years ago called No More Boring Envelopes, and this is the epitome of a non-boring envelope because it's printed with literally anything you want. One example is this one with my stationery school membership. It's school themed, so I did school themed mailers that go out to all our new members, and then we have a little pop champagne on the inside. That's what's really cool about this is you can go ahead and print a liner on the other side of the paper and it'll already be there. You don't have to install that liner, which is so much fun. So I'll talk to you about what we need to design these, and then I'll also show you the ordering process so you can get the right size and everything for PrintsWell Fulfillment, which is one of my favorite printers to use. I'll show you the right paper and everything. And I do have a link in the description of this video that will get you $25 off with them if it's your first order. So definitely use that to set up an account with them and get your discount. So there's basically endless possibilities here, but I will tell you a few things that you might want to think about when you're designing your custom envelopes. Where are the stamps going to go is a really good one here. So we left some space for the stamps to go right here. You also want to think about where you're going to write the address. So for these, I write the name on the top, just like you would in school, and the address on the piece of this notebook paper. I think it's really clever. But for example, on this one, we had to use address labels because the address wouldn't really go well over this design. This is one I also did for No More Boring Envelopes. Fine for the challenge, probably not going to mail super well. I just thought this was really cute with the shell stamps. So I would do black ink or make this a little bit less opaque. This one is a great example. We actually printed the addresses on here. We did a variable data print of these envelopes, and so all the addresses were already printed on here before we folded them, which is really, really awesome. So such a fun, simple way to do this. And then for these, we made sure that you could use white. You could also use black ink or something really dark really easily over this, and I did calligraphy on these. This is one of my favorite envelopes ever. So once you get these printed, there is another video where it will show you how to actually turn them into envelopes. And so I'm not going to cover that today just because we have a lot to cover with the design and production of them, but I'll link that video for you in the corner so you can check it out right after this one. So this is a picture of my wedding envelopes and they turned out like this. I'm a big fan of them, as you might guess. I'm a little biased, but this is what they look like kind of right out of the printer. And so I want to draw your attention to a couple things. First of all, I obviously did some testing here, and that's why I wrote go away because this yellow part wasn't even going to be showing. So I was able to just delete that altogether. There's no need to even print it. Then I want to draw your attention to the fact that we're going to print a 10 by 10 square, and I'll show you the Illustrator file in a second. But what you're actually seeing as the main, face of the envelope, the front of the envelope, is this rectangle in the middle. So it's not exactly parallel with the square. It's actually turned at a 45-degree angle. So it's just really important to pay attention to where these creases are, which I'll show you how to do in the design. And then the last thing I want to draw your attention to is that these corners are cut off, and you'll see that in the video of how to turn these into envelopes after you print them. So if you have something really important in the corner of your design, you just want to make sure that you're going to move it out of the way so it won't accidentally be cut off by this. And right before we get into design, one more thing I want to draw your attention to is just paying attention, if you're going to do the liner portion, to what's going to be seen over the crease. So when the card is actually in this, you only really see this top part of the bottle, which is a little small, but when they take the card out, they see the rest of the bottle, and I think it still makes sense. But in theory, maybe if I were redesigning these, I might bring the bottle a little bit further up on the flap, potentially, but I don't think it's a huge deal. So just kind of pay attention to where those creases are and what's going to be seen on the liner. All right, so let's head over to Illustrator and I'll show you how to set up this file. So this file is set up in two 10 by 10 pieces. And if you watch the video on how to turn these into envelopes, it'll give you more information on measurements if you want to do a size outside of a 5 by 7. But for this video, we're going to use a 5 by 7, and you can use the exact same process for any other size. You'll just need to get the dimensions from the tools that you're using in that other video. So 10 by 10 works really well for a 5 by 7 invitation, and it's just a really easy measurement for me to remember as well. And then you want to pay attention where those creases are, like I said. So we'll go ahead and create a box that's 5 by 7, and we're going to rotate it. So that's just our enter, and we'll rotate it 45 degrees. I've already done that here, and then we'll center it on that artboard. So it's going to be in the very center of the artboard, but this will be the face of your envelope. And this gives you a way to see where those creases are going to hit, see what the bottom of the envelope is going to look like, make sure your elements are going to be parallel to the sides they need to be, perpendicular to the sides they need to be, etc. And you'll see that these are set up backwards of each other. So that's basically like if I grab this piece of paper and I touch this top corner and then I flip it around, I was touching the right corner, and now when I flip it around, I'm touching the left corner. So in order to make sure that this is on the back of the top flap, you need to kind of mirror this design. So the top flap is this one right here, the top left corner on the outside, and it's going to be the top right corner on the inside, and that's why we have to mirror this design. Now you'll see that this paper is parallel to the bottom edge of the paper, and that can be a little bit more difficult when it comes to actually folding, because you have to get that score for the bottom of the envelope in the exact right place every single time, which can be a little bit difficult. But this paper is kind of a whimsical design, so I felt like, you know, it doesn't really have straight edges anyway, so I wouldn't necessarily do like a very distinct box or border, because you are going to have to be folding these by hand. But if you want to do something kind of whimsical like this, it turned out okay. One thing that I could have done differently with these envelopes is that when the bottom portion is folded up, you just have this notebook paper right here. And so that's this portion. Now, if I had planned ahead and maybe done something different, then I would have had to figure out how to cut this one off at exactly the right place and fold it in the exact right place every single time. So it's still easier to keep it like this. And even when I'm printing new batches of this, I've decided to keep it like this, even though, you know, having that notebook paper right there isn't exactly the most perfect look in the entire world, but it is okay with me. And some of those things you just kind of have to go with. I think most people are so excited to get something like this in the mail that they're not really concerned about some of those small design things. If you have a design that needs to face a certain way, then I would just recommend getting a 10 by 10 piece of paper, marking every corner, and then practice folding it into an envelope. So for instance, this is the top flap. So when it folds down, that glue is no longer going to be upside down, but is going to be right side up. So it doesn't really matter so much on a pattern like this, but it's a good idea to just get really familiar with that. Something where you're printing kind of an all over design like this wine spill or this abstract painting is going to make it a little bit easier. So the placement isn't quite as important as if you're trying to actually accomplish a specific design like this. This is another example where if the placement was a little bit off, it wouldn't be a huge deal. So I would recommend starting with a design kind of like this, getting your bearing, and then maybe growing into something that's a little bit more particular. Once you have your design ready to go, you just need to save it as a normal PDF with bleeds. I have another video on bleeds if you're not sure what that means. The big consideration here is that you do want to delete these boxes because otherwise they will print on there. They're extremely helpful, but you could put them on a non-printable layer or something if you're worried about that. And then you'll go ahead and just save this. Let me see which artboards. I would recommend putting the front of the envelope as the first artboard. It shouldn't matter too much, but that's the one that you're more concerned about. So I would put that as the first artboard. I've done it backwards here, so I'll save it the other way. Or you can save it as two separate files with Printswell. It doesn't matter, as you'll see. So these are artboards 1 and 2, and we'll do save as. I'll just do it as two separate files. So welcome package front, and I have to move my face for this one. That was artboard 2. You don't necessarily need to preserve the Illustrator editing capabilities. And for Printswell, they need 0.125 bleed on all sides. I usually set up my files like that, but you can always add it in here. Again, I have another video on that if you're not really sure what that means. I'm going to do this small file size just so that, the bleed's back, just so that it doesn't take a long time to save because it is a really big file and it's hard when I'm recording. Now I did that exact same thing with the back as well, and then we'll head over into Printswell and just click start order. Now we are going to order a flat card. We wish they could fold it for us. You could always do something like this and get it die cut from a different source. I just like to do this here and make them myself because it's simple and it's a little bit cheaper. But if it's something that you do a lot, then definitely recommend working with a die cutting company and, saving yourself some time and money that way. One benefit of getting something die cut is, for instance, you could round off the corners. There's also another little corner that you can't see that stays under here, which I usually just slice off. You'll see that in the other video. And you could potentially just get a die cut that doesn't have that in there. So it could just look a little bit more polished and professional. And then the die cutting can also score the sides for you so that you don't have to score them. So it'll save you a good bit of time and can look a little bit more polished. Okay, this is not a standard product size, so we're gonna have to enter our size manually, and you'll just choose 10 by 10. And then the paper. I highly recommend starting with a thinner paper. It's going to be easier to fold. It's going to be easier to mail. It's not going to cost extra in postage. But if you're trying to do something that's a little bit more luxurious and has more inside that you want to keep safe, then a cardstock envelope is great as well. I'll show you. These ones were cardstock. These ones I use a little bit thinner paper, which is what I'll select today. So I really like this 80-pound text eggshell white. I don't know that I would do the 70-pound. It's a little too thin, but I think the 80-pound text, the 100-pound text, I also use the 80-pound. These are cover, but they're a little bit lighter cover, and so that's a good option as well. I really like this one. I wish it came in a bright white, but in general, we're printing a lot, so it's really okay. You're not really going to see much of the paper. And we do need full color printing on the back. That's what this 4/4 means. And this says the pricing is $2.26 each, and you'll see that change in just a second. So here we'll type in our order quantity, say we're going to do 100, and now it has changed to $1.08 each, which is much more like what I'm familiar with, and if you keep going up, it might go down a little bit. So now we'll upload our products. As a reminder, I'm going to do the front as the front file. And then I'll do the back as the back file. And you are ready to go, and you're seeing exactly what you need to be seeing here. This is mirrored, so the top left over here, what's going to be on the back of that is the top right over on the other side. This preview always looks a little bit blurry, but I promise it's okay. And then you'll just click next and get through these finishing options, add to cart, all the same things that you're typically going to do with PrintsWell Fulfillment, and you'll see that right there where you can verify and choose all your shipping methods and everything else. The last thing I do want to draw your attention to is when you're doing these, just know that you're not going to have adhesive on them. So you either need to purchase adhesive and apply it, or a better option in my opinion is just using a glue stick or a tape glider to close these envelopes. So that's what I do for most of these. I hope this was helpful in giving you some inspiration for custom envelopes and showing you how many possibilities there are out there. I love that you can print a liner on here. That literally costs like 5 cents extra or something to print on the back of the page that you're already printing. You're already doing the work to turn it into an envelope, so you might as well have that liner already attached as just a fun, cool surprise for your guests or for your clients. There's so many possibilities here. Just paying attention to doing some practice runs, seeing where everything goes, seeing where the top right corner ends up after you turn it into an envelope will help you so much. And then making sure you leave room for stamps and pay attention to how you're going to actually write or print on top of this. I wouldn't necessarily run these envelopes through a printer after you've converted them, but you can always do a variable data job of this and print directly on these envelopes before you convert them into envelopes. So now that you've watched all about design, I hope you'll watch the other video where I talk to you about how to actually physically turn these into envelopes and what tools you can use for that. It's actually so fun and not very difficult at all, and I think you'll find so many different possibilities for it. So I hope you enjoy this. If you do try this out and order with Printswell, I do have that $25 off code via the link in my description of this video. Thanks everybody for watching, and while you're here, please stick around and check out some of our other graphic design and stationery tutorials.